Hi everyone, this is M&I TV and I'm Keith Robinson. This video you're about to watch is part two, conversation between me and James Morgan on keeping data at the heart of your COVID business survival strategy. So here you can hear us talk through the practical steps that the C-suite and data professionals can take to make sure that you have a data-driven survival strategy to COVID. Go and watch part one if you haven't already. We explored the issues in more detail and some questions that we need answering. And as always, please like and subscribe if you find it interesting. Enjoy. So if we take all of that, let's just say you've pitched that to the board, they're nodding their heads. What would be sort of your three next steps action plan for a company?
Yeah, the next steps action plan is during these difficult times, if your business is one that's under stress and pressure, because some aren't, but a lot are, it's trying to get that information together as best you can in the shorter term. So significant investments in longer term strategy for a company that's under dire pressure and dire need isn't going to be the right approach. Looking at your available resources and those of even third parties, because sometimes you may need to spend a little bit of money in these times, is to say, how can I gather together the right amount of information that is going to best guide me through this problem? Be that guiding me on locations to switch on first, be that guiding me on where my stock availability or stock shocks are, be that guiding me on logistics and supply chain, or on essential marketing and communications to customers. So how can I get as much information from inside my company, but also understanding third-party data that might help me, and get that together as quickly as possible to allow me to make the right decisions in the short term. And those will be around where will I need to spend, where will I need to cut back, and what will the impacts of those things be? So there's a short-term strategy to keep the business going, to look after your employees, to look after your supply chain, look after your stocks. Then there will be using that information to understand how we release from that process. How do we make sure the information is available as the world comes back to normal, to geographically make the right decisions, to understand whether there's any further shocks coming as parts of the world sadly go through this crisis, where they're at the early stages now, where are other opportune markets opening up that we could play out, and what behaviors will happen in the medium term versus the longer term, and how can you make those decisions. And then as things start to settle, the realization that perhaps companies didn't have that data available to help with their crisis management plans. And actually all of the data that we're talking about to help you through this crisis is stuff that in general working days is the information you need. So companies should then hopefully have a moment of self-reflection and look at this and go, I actually needed to know this all of the time to run an effective business. How have I been able to function without being able to see my data and how my business interacts end to end? How have I not understood the right employee levels, the right stock levels, how much cash is locked up in stock? Even things like liquidity and financial measures. Have I understood how long I could survive for and what levers to pull? And every day of business should be about using information to mix with that business knowledge that people build up over the years to understand what decisions to make, what levers to pull, and what changes to make.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. I think it reminds me of our first conversation, James, on data governance, and ultimately this brings all the way back to how important a data strategy aligned with your business strategy is at the very top of the business for these crisis periods. It really highlights how important that is. And if a company hasn't got a aligned data strategy and has dived into data science and is trying to do some cool stuff without this top line strategy, then now that's going to come under severe pressure and come undone during these periods, I would suggest.
It will come undone. And also if you've built out just systems on the fly, without the right support, without the right operational nature of it, and they're really quite flimsy, when things come under stress, they'll start to fall apart. And as you potentially have to ramp down resourcing levels, the things that you thought just appeared, say on a Monday morning or on a weekly basis, or people were able to pull together for you, you will realize how manually intensive those activities were. Yeah. And the fact that they could have been done in a slick, automated manner had you invested in those space and properly operationalized things. What it will also show, though, is you do need the agility of things like the cloud environments. You do need well-managed, rapidly available data and people able to move from looking at more fixed and rigid business intelligence or reporting to doing what ifs. Yeah. And what the current situation is showing is the power of the what if analysis, scenario planning, forecasting. So you need to have the skills, but more importantly, the underlying data to enable you to do the what if piece. So you can understand that as the latest change happens in this country, around the world, you will have the scenario planning to know what to do and know the impact of the lever that you pull.
Yeah. As quickly as possible as well, relates to all of that, isn't it? As quick as possible, you can get this data, analyze it and make a decision.
Absolutely. If it takes you forever to create a new report or to create some new analysis, because your analytical teams or even data science teams, if you have them, or reporting teams, have to go back and pull the data from here, there and everywhere just to answer the most simple question, then you know you've got an agility problem. Yeah. And solving an agility problem, bizarrely, isn't about doing things on the fly. You have to put in place those processes and governance. You have to put in place the systems and people and those skill sets to enable you to work with agility. You can't create agility rapidly. Yeah. You can do your best in these troubled times, but what you really want is that agile capability there in your business today.
Yeah, that's great. So what you're saying there is this is an opportunity to shine a light on those inefficient processes and lack of automation in key areas and lack of speed where you need it and agility. That if you can survive this, it'll make you a more effective business on the other side. You can change now.
Absolutely. And what you'll also be able to see, depending on the nature of the business, is how well hedged you were. And I don't necessarily mean financial hedging, but how well distributed were you in terms of customers around the country or around the world, or in different demographic groups.
In the short-term survival strategy, do you see, this was going through my mind, is the feedback loop between data in the C-suite needs to be shorter in this period? So you've got a very anxious CEO, CIO. A key to data professionals now will be delivering value even quicker to demonstrate that you're using data effectively to help them in this survival.
Absolutely. CEOs, hopefully, because they never shouldn't be panicking. However, they will have a number of questions they need to answer. What they probably need to refine is what are the really important questions. And that's again where a data person can help. What do you really need to know? Because if they're just firing out questions left, right, and center without the knowledge of what they're going to do with the answer, that can cause more problems than it's worth. So part of it will be refining what are the most important questions to answer. Then what a C-suite CEO will need will be accurate answers or good enough answers. For financial responsibilities, those answers have to be perfect, but for a lot of things you have to be good, and you have to have good data. So what a data professional should be throwing their time at now is, can I get hold of good quality data that will enable me to answer those questions? Can I stitch that data together quickly to make it available so that when the next question comes in, it's going to be done in a rapid form? And am I blending in external third-party data to help me understand trends in the virus, the response to the virus and the recovery and the global economy and supply chains, that I can blend with my internal data to give a true recommendation about what the data is telling me? Because whatever we do with data has to be turned into a decision and an outcome and an operational activity. So yes, boards should be demanding. They should restrict that demand on a challenge data team to what they really need to know. Mm-hmm. The ability of the data team to answer those questions will, one, depend on their agility to cobble things together as best they can at the moment, or the better companies will already have that data to hand. So what you'll find at the higher end of stuff is massive amounts of scenario planning, reforecasting, refocusing, and boards that are able to make these decisions rapidly and throw in thousands of scenarios. At the lower end of maturity, get what you can, make sure it's accurate enough to make a decision, and make sure you're focusing on the right big decisions. Yeah. So a lot of your reaction in the short term will depend on the maturity you're at. And there will be that massive range depending on maturity.
Yeah. And as the senior data leader in the business, you want to be sort of over communicating, staying close to the CEO and CIO, just to reassure them and tell them it's on its way as quickly as possible.
Yeah. So one of your skills will be pushing back and going, why do you need to know that? Why is that important? And what are you going to do if I provide that information to stop overload? So that's where having somebody senior enough and influential enough to say no when there's a deluge of requests from everybody to know everything and work out what is important to answer. Yeah. But then it will be about working with your team, your third parties, the open data availability and collaboration with other companies to say, what can I get together to answer as many sensible questions as possible? And how can I check that those questions are being answered with good data rather than bad data? Because rapid decisions off of very poor quality data will have the adverse effect of what you're doing. Yeah. But really, really upfront, understand why you're asking that question, whether that is a sensible question or whether actually there's a different thing you need to be looking at. What's the leading indicator versus the lagging measure? And how can I get a good enough answer together?
Hey everyone, thanks for watching to the end. Please share some comments below. Let me know what you think. Like and share if you haven't already. And stay tuned for more data-driven content from M&I TV. Thank you.